Hey everybody, Jim here, and today we're going to be replacing this EcoSmart 8 with this much more powerful 13 kilowatt RAIM device. So it's an RETEX 13 at 13 kilowatts, almost double so powerful as this device. And I'll tell you why. My friend's wife, she likes the luxurious shower, and this device does not make a hot enough shower. So before I tear it out, I'm going to run some tests and get some baselines on how quickly these silly devices can heat water as they flow through. Man, I am loving this kitchen. This is as sweet as can be. So in order to measure the flow rate, I came up with a very scientific test, and it involves measuring the amount of time it takes to fill up this gallon jug with hot water. Alright, so here we go. Some of the water is splashing off, but most of it's going in. For that 40 seconds. Now I need to take a baseline reading of the temperature that it was producing at 40 seconds. I guess that's a gallon and a half. Right at a gallon and a half. Let's figure this out. Alright, so once it peaks at 105, that's actually not very good. 102, let's call it 102. And the cold water coming out of the ground is right about 69 degrees. Alright, we're gonna go with, well, we're gonna go with 60. Let's make sure we're doing our math right. Let's go with 67 degrees. Wow. This is the beginning of November in Pensacola, Florida. So this device, running at a gallon and a half per minute, is only adding 34 degrees Fahrenheit and drawing 33 and a half, or about 7,200 watts of energy. So it's not actually truly an 8 kilowatt device. It's only about 7,200 watts. So yeah, we can actually use that in our math. And yeah, it's actually pretty close to 1 amp per rise in temperature at a gallon and a half of flow. That gives me something to think about. So the problem that my friend's bride reported to him was that the device, the EcoSmart 8, was not producing water hot enough for this wash machine. And certainly it's going to be drawing water out of this faucet at a rate faster than a gallon and a half. So yeah, it's going to be even colder than the gallon and a half per minute flow rate that we experienced in the kitchen just now. Maybe 95 degrees is what they intimated. So this new device is actually going to fix that with no problem. So rather than force you to watch me take the old unit out and then put the new unit in, I just decided to do that offline. But I'm looking at these and they always seemed familiar, but I never had one next to the other. This one on the right is the EcoSmart 8, and this one on the left is the RAIM 13 kilowatt. That's the RETEX 13. And you see the screw pattern is identical to both. You can actually look and see where it just lines up perfectly. The back plate is the same, and the connectors are the same. Let's look inside. Oh, and before I show you that, look at the box they come in. The boxes are the same, and the packaging is the same. So I'm looking inside at both of these, and they are nearly identical, except for the gauge wire. You can see that these are injected molded identically with the same connector on both sides, same circuit board on both sides, and here inside you can see a series of jumpers that go from 6 kilowatts all the way to 13 kilowatts. Same here, 6 to 13 kilowatts. Same LED screens on both, and the plumbing is near identical, except this one has 2 kettles, and this EcoSmart 8 on the right has just the 1 kettle. 2 kettles on the RETE X13. And then here you can see that there is this, I guess, flow meter with the transistor or MOSFET on it. Maybe this acts as a heatsink with cold water flowing through it. And over here you have the same exact one, but instead of 1 transistor it has 2. So I think that these are simply made in the same factory and then branded for Rheem and EcoSmart. And I'm guessing EESmart does the same thing. It uses the same dials, same boards, same circuits, same everything. Let's see. L60. L60. Yeah. So these are effectively the same device, only this one's set up for 1 kettle at 8 kilowatts, and this one's set up with 2 kettles at 13 kilowatts. Fun. So good news, because these are effectively the same device, only slightly modified for different flow rates and wattage, I don't have to put new screws in here. I can just hang this new device right on the old screws. That's it. So I'm going to hook up the plumbing offline. You see I've already put in the bushings to go from into compression to NPT, and then from NPT half-inch to NPT 3/4 for my existing hot water lines. So I'll just connect these up offline, and I'll see you in a minute. So I've got the new one installed, and it seems to be pretty content. I did the wiring just like the EcoSmart 8 in the last video, and of course this is going to be 6.2 instead of 8.2. Don't forget, there's no need to get 8.3 or 6.3 when you're doing these. They only need this single ground wire to go onto the kettle. Let's go inside. Well, it's warmed up a little bit today. It's already half a degree warmer coming out of the ground. So we're going to go with 67.5, and now we're going to see how hot the water comes out at 1.5 gallons per minute. Yeah. So there's already some hot water in the line where I was testing a little earlier. I'm going to let that run through. It's coming. So it takes a few seconds for the device to ramp up and start producing hot water, but once it does, it starts putting it out. I just want to see if it gets up to 120 degrees. Alright, so I think we're capped. Oh, no, not yet. Get a lot of water on there, sorry. Alright, so looks like 118 is going to be the cap. Okay, so from 68 to 118 is 50 degrees at a flow rate of 1.5 gallons. I'm pretty impressed. Let's see how many amps it's drawing. It's drawing 49 amps, which makes me think that this device isn't maxed out. Let me turn up the water tank a little to see if I can get this thing to max out. Alright, so I pumped this sweet thing up to 130. Let's see what it's doing now. Huh. Still 49 degrees. It's definitely hot. steam is coming out of the sink right now. Very impressive. And for the record, it takes about 30 seconds for all that hot water to travel from the water tank, the tankless water heater, through all the 3/4 pipe in the house, all the way to this sink. Yeah, I think that thing's maxed out at about a 49 amp draw, which means that the... Wait, let me do the math in my head. 50. So I've maxed this thing out at 118 degrees with water coming out of the ground at about 68 degrees. So that's a 50-degree rise at just under 50 amps. And the fact that this thing stops heating water, doesn't go up any more in amperage after I turn it up, makes me think that this device really realistically draws around 11 kilowatts and not the full 13 kilowatts. It's a little disappointing, but that's what you get. Let me put the thing together and, well, we'll just let this run for a little bit to make sure there are no leaks. So I'm trying to figure out why the 13 kilowatt device running realistically at 11 kilowatts isn't 50% more powerful than the device running at 7.2 kilowatts. And it was bugging me, and so I said, well, let me do my water gallon jug test again. And it's actually faster now. The flow rate through the new device is a little bit faster, and we're almost at 2, nearly at 2. I'll do the math later and post it here on the screen. But it took 35 seconds to fill this jug, whereas with the older EcoSmart 8, it took 40 seconds. So it's a significantly faster flow, and that means that the water's going to have less time touching the coils and not going to get as hot. But if you're using a low-flow shower head, this will be fine. Right now, my buddy and I, we're going to try the wash machine to see how hot the water comes out of it. Here we go. So I'm at the wash machine, and I'm going to turn on the hot water. It might get a little noisy, so you won't hear a lot of me talking, which is for the better, I think.
Turn it on a slide.
Is it set to hot?
Hold on, that was.
Look at this, dude. 2 men can't operate a damn wash machine. Hot. There it is. Okay. Let me crank it around one more time, make sure we're getting hot. Okay. Alright, so it's going to start drawing hot water out of the tank, and there's already hot water in the line, so it's warm. But I'm not going to trust this. Oh look, it cooled off already. So let's let it get nice and hot, and then we'll test to see how hot this water is. Yeah, that is a lot more flow. That's about a 5-gallon bucket every minute and a half or so, and that's plenty warm. Let's see how warm. Looks like 106. Got 107.
85 degrees.
Oh man, so yeah, it's 108 now. So I think she'll be very happy.
Starting to reach its potential. It's getting hotter.
So that's actually water that's already in the line. So we're gonna test. We're gonna let it run for a minute. So my buddy and I, we got to thinking, if the water is passing through the water heater too quickly to pick up the right amount of heat, then we can reduce the flow with this quarter-turn ball valve and maybe get the temperature that we really want. Let's see if we can get it to 120 degrees. That certainly feels hot. Wow. 113. 15.5. 116. I'm just going to hold it here for a little bit longer. 1/16. 1/16.5. It's thinking about it. It might do it. No, I think it's capped. Oh, there's 1/17. Yeah, we're gonna say it's gonna do 1/17. I think Mike's Fry is gonna be very content with 117-degree water coming out of the wash machine.
All the packs.
So my friend, he restricted the flow underneath the kitchen sink here.
Yeah.
He just turned it down a little bit. We're gonna see what temperature we get now. 116. Yeah, I think everyone's gonna be content at that temperature.
Oh yeah. That's plenty hot enough to be dishes.
Looks like it got to 117.
It did 118 now.
Nice. Yeah, I think everyone will be content.
Well, there you go.
So just in closing, this is the RETEX 13 running at presumably 13 kilowatts, but I think it's 11 kilowatts because you're only getting 50 amps at 220. All told, it was just as easy and simple as the EcoSmart 8 to install, and realistically costs only $40 more. So anytime I do this for a friend in the future, I'm just going to start at 13 kilowatts, and instead of trying to go in at a EcoSmart 8. The EcoSmart 8 works fine for my apartments with the low flow faucets and shower heads, and in all the years that I've had them, it's about I guess it's about 3 years times 3 units, that's 9 years. All female tenants, no one has ever complained. But going forward, I'm just going to go with 11 or 13 and not worry about that. So yeah, I learned a lot making this video, and I hope you did too. Before I end this video, I want to do a little more research. I still have that DSK65 installed at one of my places. I put it in as an experiment, but it's so neat I haven't taken it out yet. But what I've noticed about it has flow regulating in it. So let me show you what it looks like when I run the cold water. Alright, so you get a nice powerful stream that looks like that. Well, let me switch to the hot water. It's still pretty good. You can detect a difference. Let's go to the kitchen. So I ran my very scientific test again, and the gallon jug with the cold water takes 44 seconds. With this super fine plumbing, this is a very fancy kitchen faucet, but it's because of its design, it's very low flow. It has to pinch through this little connector here. So 44 seconds to fill a gallon jug with the cold water, but then the hot water takes 49 seconds, which makes me think that the hot water tank, the tankless water heater, is regulating the flow. It's restricting the flow in order to make it go a little slower. So let's test to see how cold the water is coming from the ground on November 6th in Pensacola, Florida. Alright, that's about the same as my friend's house. 68 degrees. Let's just go with that. And let's see what happens when we pump up the hot water. Alright, that's still hot. And it's going to take a minute for the water to flow from the tankless water heater through 3/4 inch pipe all the way to this kitchen, even though it's right in the next room. Alright, it's warming up. That's 103, 104, 105, 5. Alright, so I think it's going to cap out at 1065. Alright. Alright, I think I'm going to go home and do some math. So I came home and I wrote a couple of formula to extrapolate where each one of these devices is going to be producing water at 1.5 gallons. And you can see the EcoSmart 8 was the easiest. My measurements came at 1.5 gallons per minute at 34 degrees, so my functions in turn both returned 34 degrees, which makes pretty good sense. And then the the Rheem RETEX 13 comes in at 50, give or take. And sure enough, the DSK 65, if it were able to run at 1.5 gallons, would realistically produce about 30 degrees rise in 1.5 gallons per minute. And it took me a minute to figure out the corollary between these. Sure enough, it's approximately 1 degree Fahrenheit per amp per gallon per minute. I'm sorry, at 1.5 gallons per minute. So if you're running your faucets and shower heads at 1.5 gallons per minute, each one of these will produce 1 degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature based upon that amperage. So it's almost a one-to-one corollary. It took me a while to find it, but there it is. Realistically, this should be 1.0. This should be 1. So, long story short, that's going to give you that's almost like a buyer's guide. You find out what the coldest temperature the water coming from the ground in your area is in the dead of winter, and you say to yourself, oh, I need a 110 degree shower at 1.5 gallons per minute. If in Pensacola, Florida, it's 60 degrees coming out of the ground, and you want to add 50 to get a 110 degree shower, you would get the 50 amp device. Now granted, this claims it's 60, but let's be real, it's really running at 50 amps. So I've gotten much better results on my EcoSmart 8s in my apartments, and I couldn't figure out why. It was a real head scratcher, and it took me a long time to figure this out, but I finally came to the conclusion that I was restricting the flow just like my buddy in his house, but in a slightly different way. So if you see here, the last 3 water tanks that I installed, I used this 3/4 inch hose because I was just swapping out water tanks with tankless heaters and then putting in bushings to reduce the size of the pipe and connect up the device. But in my apartments, I was using this 3/8 hose with this 3/8 connector, and you can see a marked difference in inner diameter between these two connectors. So the water flow in this one is going to be much lower than the max flow through here. And I think that's why I was getting higher temperatures in the showers and in the faucets, because I was artificially restricting the flow going into the tankless water heater, and thereby allowing the water to sit in the tank a little bit longer and heat up a little bit more than it should. So I bet if I went back and looked at my faucets and shower heads, they'd probably be running at much lower than 1.5 gallons per minute. Now you can simulate this same result by partially shutting off the inlet valve on the cold water supply line going into your tankless water heater and get similar results. Just like my friend did when he slowed down the flow going into his wash machine, and we got an extra 15 degree rise. You can do the same if you just reduce the flow coming into your tankless water heater right at the beginning. The lesson from this video, my takeaway anyway, is that I'm not going to go with the EcoSmart 8 any longer. It's neat and it's great, it's cheap, but the EcoSmart 11 and the Rheem RETEX 11 cost about the same price, and the 13 is only about $40 more than the EcoSmart 8. So I'm going to go with those in the future, even though there's going to be an additional cost for 6-gauge wire instead of 8-gauge wire. I'm running the wire anyway. That's really what's going to cost me the time and the money. The additional cost in the gauge of wire is minimal. It's negligible. I'm not even worried about that. So yeah, I don't want callbacks like this. I don't mind. I actually took the old EcoSmart 8, and I'll use that in one of my apartments. But going forward, I'm not going to buy any more EcoSmart 8s unless I move to the very south part of Florida. In which case, the EcoSmart 8 would provide a very nice shower at 1.5 gallons per minute. Well, hey, I sure learned a lot making this video, and I hope you did too. Thanks so much for watching.